the article I found was called The Roots of Route 66. And when I was reading through the article, I found it quite interesting because I actually never knew about any of this stuff. Because I know what Route 66 is. I mean, it goes through Springfield and it leads to like bigger cities like Los Angeles and Chicago and all that stuff. But I really didn't know the history behind it, and so that's what I found really interesting for this class for minority groups. Because in the article it talked about how like a year before construction even began for Route 66, they made, and they talked to a bunch of African Americans saying, hey, you're not allowed to travel on Route 66, and if you do, you're going to get in big trouble, which means they can get their life at risk if they try to go on Route 66 in any way. And it also talked about in the article where African Americans weren't even allowed to stop at beaches, gas stations, anywhere to get food, places to sleep. If it was mostly white people there, they weren't allowed to do that just because of the segregation. I mean, in the article it talked about how construction for Route 66 started in 1925, so segregation was still a pretty big deal back then, obviously. And so because they got segregated against, they had to take their own bedding, they had to take their own food, they had to take a cooler and put drinks in there because there was no way for them to stop. They even had to take gas cans because they weren't allowed to stop at gas stations if it was gas stations that had mostly white people in there. Which, I know that's how everything was back in the day with all that stuff going on. It's just really heartbreaking to hear that, like, Route 66, when it was being built, African Americans weren't allowed to travel on the road because it was for white people only. And it's just sad to see that that's how people were treated back then, African Americans. I mean, I feel like anybody with a different race color that wasn't white wasn't allowed to travel on there, even if you were wealthy. But if you were a different color that wasn't white, it was not a good thing for you to do. But I'm glad to see that it's changed throughout the years, and that's not like that anymore with Route 66. So, thanks.